Well, hello there, my name is Hannah and this is Gamers Waypoint. So today I want to cover a little indie game. It's available on Steam and I played it not too long ago, but it was also released not too long ago, back in September, and it is called Lake. Basically it's this very calm mail delivery sim in a way, and it advertises itself as just being a very peaceful experience in terms of gameplay and scenery, and I gave it a go. It seemed to have kind of the multiple choice gameplay that I like to place from time to time, and so this is basically a little bit of a review about my time playing Lake. So the first thing I want to say about this game is that it is beautiful. Like I said, it is developed by an indie dev team, so it's not got like AAA graphics or anything like that, but for what it is, it looks really quite lovely. They've done a really good job with the scenic areas in which the game takes place, and the premise is that you are the protagonist Meredith Weiss, who has come back to the hometown of Providence Oaks to cover her dad's mail delivery route whilst he's on holiday. Don't know if I've ever actually encountered an instance where that's happened, but it is the storyline for the game. And Providence Oaks is this lovely, I believe, Oregonian town, and it's got that small town vibes. Everybody knows each other, and you have been gone for about 20 years. You went to college, university, and then got a big city, big time job in New York, and you have just come back for this kind of respite, but also to help your dad out. So once you return, people remember who you are, and it's basically like a town stuck in time, if that makes sense. Not that it's a time travelling game whatsoever, it's just that once you return, a lot of things seem the same or extremely similar to when you left, and it's this idea of, do I appreciate my hometown more now that I'm older kind of thing, or do you still appreciate the New York lifestyle? And that is basically where the choices in the game are going to lead you. So concerning the game mechanics, the thing that I will say, and I am not trying to bash this game in any way, I did enjoy it, but I just wanted to like it a little bit more, and I felt like it was just missing quite a few things. Like I said, it is an indie development, so I know that it's not always easy when you have smaller teams, etc., but it does kind of advertise itself on the premise of this multiple choice. Your story can go, you know, in any particular direction that you choose it to, design structure, but what I found is that the dialogue options were often quite a bit lacking. Conversations would often abruptly end. They didn't seem to tail off naturally or organically. Sometimes the conversation options just didn't really match the situation. There were things that you could imagine saying that the character was just not able to say, and it wasn't really particularly full of an array of conversational options. Now I know that teams and companies such as like Don't Nod, Deck 9 and BioWare like have this down to a T, so I'm not expecting, like, as we say, the big boy approach to it in terms of like being able to have a full script writing team and throwing a lot of money at it, but I do think that like there could have been some more options with regards to a lot of the conversations, and to also kind of give more context about some of the people that you meet in the town, because you do make what can be considered some big choices with regards to who you meet whilst you're in Providence Oaks, but the conversational topics beforehand don't always lend themselves very heavily to your choices. Like, there's not a lot for you to go off of before you make these decisions. So I did find myself playing this and spending a lot of time wishing that there were things that I could say that were not coming back up on screen, which was slightly disappointing. There were also times where certain characters are really rude and you were like, oh, this is the perfect time to like completely go off on them and give them a piece of my mind, and the dialogue option just did not allow for that whatsoever. I don't know if that was in the interest of keeping Meredith kind of a placid, calm character or not, and also trying to keep drama out of the situation, but there were two instances that bugged me so much. So the first one is that there's this writer in a cabin in the woods. He's obviously kind of rented it to go off and write, and you go and deliver his package and he's forgotten that he's ordered anything. So you're knocking on the door, he's being rude, he's like, go away, stop bothering me, I told you people, I just want to be left alone, blah 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 blah. And you're basically talking to him through the door being like, you've ordered a package, I'm delivering it for you. And then he eventually remembers that he did actually order something, and he's still really quite curt and shirty once he gets to the door, and I'm like, you should just like verbally blow his head off, man. Like, he does not deserve your kindness at this point. This is an up himself writer that thinks that his words are gold, and so he doesn't care about what you have to say, so just like let him have it, and the game just doesn't allow it, and I'm like, no! It would have been so good. And then another instance is an employee at the nearby hotel. You deliver packages there, and when you enter, he often just ignores you, doesn't respond to you, and when you leave packages on the desk, he's really rude about it, and you're like, where else am I supposed to put this thing then? He's just awful. And by the end of the game, spoiler, he's managed to break a bone falling off of his chair, and you end up just being really nice to him. And I'm not saying that you can't be nice to him in that situation, but in prior situations where you should really be, you know, once again telling him where to go when he's giving you this attitude for delivering packages, it just doesn't allow for it in the dialogue options, which was a bit of a shame in my books. But then again, that's probably a confrontational approach to the situations within the game, and admittedly the game is trying to be as drama free as possible, which leads me to my next point. So with a view to being this really calm and peaceful gameplay experience, there's very little drama in the game, but just in my personal opinion, it's hard to make the narrative function whilst it's trying to swerve from this drama all the time, because it incorporates storylines and plot points which feel like they actually should have drama incorporated into them to actually have them be meaningful, which is difficult, I know, and you know, sometimes you don't want to play a drama-filled game, but in order to avoid that, I'm guessing that it would have to just stick to simply being a mail delivery simulator, which, not that simulators aren't popular, because look at Train Simulator, Truck Driver Simulator, etc. They work really well, but they obviously wanted to include a narrative in this game, which is absolutely fine, but it just misses the point on a lot of occasions purely because it's trying to be this non-confrontational storyline. So for instance, one of the characters that you meet is essentially your boss at the mail depot. His name is Frank. He's also your dad's friend from working with him for years on end, and he's an actual nice guy, or at least he seems to be a nice guy in the premise of the game, but he has a gambling problem, and this is discussed by your dad when he talks to you over the phone when he's on holiday, and it is also actually investigated by a higher up within the mail company who knows that he's basically taking bets through unmarked mail which has been delivered to the depot of Providence Oaks. And then this storyline happens where Frank disappears because he's basically being interrogated, like not in kind of, you know, a waterboarded, tortured kind of way, but he's getting a disciplinary basically, and he's taken away from the depot, and this higher up who's not supposed to be a likeable character, he's like, I'm in charge now, we don't know if Frank will be back, and then I kid you not, the next day he's back. And Frank just explains everything away by being like, I always get out of it. And there's nothing there, because it's trying not to have drama. It's just this really loose storyline whereby it's like, Frank does this thing, it's not really great, but he seems a nice guy. Oh, he's gone, no, he's back. And you just like, I don't know what to do with that. It's also rushed and similarly abrupt. Again, this higher up guy comes into the office one day, you know, after 48 hours or something, he's like, I'm going back to my other office now, bye. And well, that's what it feels like anyway, and you're like, okay, see ya. Like, there was no real consequence to any of this happening. Frank doesn't really get slapped on the wrist. He continues to do what he's doing, he continues to gamble. At the end of the game, you actually even advise him on a baseball game and who to root for, who to bet for. So it's supposed to be this kind of happy-go-lucky narrative, and because of that, it just makes everything feel like it's very tenuous in terms of importance. It doesn't really have a strong narrative thread, in my opinion, which makes me sound mean. I don't want to sound mean because it is a nice little game. So yeah, you continue to do your mail rounds and you encounter more people, and this kind of theme of dangling a little bit of drama but then pulling it back ensues all the way through the game. The game is about 5 hours long, so it's not very long to play. You can do it in an afternoon. It is a nice relaxing experience. But yeah, so another example is when you meet your childhood friend Kay again for the first time in 20 years. So you deliver a package to her house, you don't realise that it's her house, and she's kind of short with you, not particularly welcoming, and you pick up on this and you're like, oh gosh, she's not very happy with me. And then the next day you encounter her at the diner where she works, and you kind of are like, oh, I felt like things were a bit off yesterday. And the reason that they were off is because Meredith, it turns out, has not even tried to contact Kay in like the past 20 years. They used to be best friends, and she's made basically little to no effort whatsoever to keep in touch with her. Some things have happened to Kay in terms of family matters whilst Meredith has been away, and so Kay is understandably miffed with Meredith because she has made no effort whatsoever to, you know, make sure she's okay, try to be a good friend, extend a helping hand or anything like that. But when you encounter her in the diner, it's more than that in terms of dialogue, but it's this kind of essence of like you going, sorry, and then Kay just goes, okay, well anyway, we're best friends again now, and I'm going to tell you everything that's happened, and we're going to be on a great level again, da, da, da. And it's just so quick, and it just does not feel natural. There is nothing to say that people can't snap back to being best friends again, because that is the case a lot of the time. When people are really great with each other, they will just conform back to being, you know, best buddies, which is absolutely fine. But it's the fact that all of Kay's grievances, which are also, you know, understandable, just basically get swept over once again at the hand of the very short dialogue options that are available. And because it is such a short game, they try to cram everything in, and I feel like that is also at the expense of what could be more fleshed out conversations that in turn end up being more meaningful and more in depth, which would just give the game more replayability as well, to see what you could have said, etc. It just feels a little bit on rails at times, even though it's not, and also the kind of perception of all roads lead to the same place, which is just like not the worst thing in the world, but it just could have been a little bit better planned, in my opinion. So in this game as well, there are two love interests, those being Robert and Angie, and you meet these whilst you're on your mail round. Robert is kind of the gruff mountain man that lives in a cabin, and Angie is this LA native come to Providence Oaks to start a video store because it's set in the 80s. So you get two kind of contrasting characters to try and appeal to two different target audiences, which is absolutely fine, but same thing, neither of them are really that compelling, and it's a bit of a shame because I think that they had a lot of promise with these two characters, and once again they just didn't really get fully fleshed out. So for instance, when you meet Robert, you deliver his mail as some letters, and he basically starts talking to himself about them, and you're just like, everything okay? Seems to be something up with the mail. And then he's reluctant but not reluctant to talk about it. It's quite confusing, to be fair. 1 minute he's like, it's nothing, and then just basically goes blah and starts talking about what is on his mind, and you're just like, what? So basically he is grieved by the fact that a company wants to knock down some of the land, well, some of the trees on the land, and build an apartment complex, which is very rarely something that is, you know, smiled upon by natives and locals of small towns like that. Anyway, I personally have had that kind of experience where I live as well, so you're always fighting to keep the land, and that's the part of his story. And so you end up helping him to achieve staving off this apartment building mission, basically. and you do like a radio broadcast to encourage the locals to sign a petition against it, etc. And you end up managing to stop the project, but you only postpone it for 6 months. You don't stop it entirely, like it's still in the tracks, as it were. It's just that it's not going to happen for half a year, which means that 3 to 6 months down the line he's going to have to do the exact same process again, which in terms of the story just felt a little bit like a false win. There was nothing cathartic about it, because it's not like, you know, yeah, stick it to the corporations, we're keeping our land. It was just like, we've stopped it for now. And you're like, you want to stop it entirely, so what's going on there? But then yes, so whilst you're participating in this kind of campaign to prevent these apartments being built, you go to the diner and you basically have what is like a little date, and it's just a really random occurrence really once you get down to it, because one minute you're talking about the apartment thing and how you're going to stop it and how you're getting on with that, which is absolutely fine, and then the lady who's serving you is kind of inferring that there's flirtation and everything like that, which there is a little bit of, and you can choose to have some wine delivered to the table, and Robert seems to be all for this, and as soon as the wine shows up on the table, he dips. He's like, I've got to go, and you're just like sat there like, what? It's crushed grapes, nothing wrong with it. Don't know what that was, but in any case, yeah, he gets out there really quickly. He explains it away later, basically saying that he's just been on his own for so long that he got freaked out, which I'm not saying doesn't happen, but same thing, it just seems rushed, and it seems like forcing narrative turn in there, like shoehorning it in there for a little bit of kind of contrast, and it just doesn't work. And because of this as well, like, you can still continue to kind of romance Robert, but after it kind of makes you feel like you don't want to, like you don't want to pursue it. Like the next time you see him, you can basically just be like, no worries, it happens, anyway we're friends, and just leave it at that basically. So there doesn't seem to be, I don't know if there is like a canonical version, it doesn't actually seem to lean towards Robert. So then we have Angie. We do find out a bit more about Angie. She's more talkative, like I say, she opens this video store and you go see films with her, etc. Like she comes over to your house to watch a film, and you go to like a local cinema in a different town to go watch a film, and she's basically the film buff, and that's basically her entire personality. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but that does seem to be the thing with these two characters, is that one's personality is liking films and one's personality is living in a cabin in the woods. There isn't much really about it like to expand upon, whereas, and I know I've mentioned this game a lot of times, but if you take for instance Life is Strange, we get characters that have a lot to them. Yes, they like music, yes they might like films, but they have an entire experience that we are able to experience with them, and that's just not really the case in Lake as much. If you take like Chloe Price, she's the rebel, she's a bit of an anarchist, she's lost her dad, which is really sad, so you feel for her, but she also has this past with Max, which you learn about, and you realise that they're both flawed and that they're just trying to come back together in whatever the way they can fathom to do that, whilst all this chaos at Blackwell is happening. Same for Alex Chen in the newest Life is Strange, which I'm thinking of doing a video about. True Colours, she's been through the system in one way or another, she's been separated from her family, she's looking for her forever home, but she doesn't know if she has one, and she's trying to see how she can feel her emotions again because she's repressed them for so long, but she is a musician and she loves music, etc. There's so much to go at, whereas in Lake, it just seems on face value and superficially like Robert is plaid shirt wearing man and Angie is glasses wearing film buff, and that seems to be the only thing that is differentiating the two characters, apart from obviously if you're not like into the woman loving woman stuff, then you're probably going to want to choose Robert, or you can choose neither, to be fair, but yes, I suppose there is that to be considered slightly. But yeah, out of the two, Angie in my opinion does seem to be the more compelling character, but there is still annoyances there as well. Like one minute, like she's talking to you about film, she's excited for you delivering mail to the shop, because you don't deliver it to her house, you deliver it to the store. You basically have a date, you can choose to have a bit of a smooch or whatever, and then the day after she's really funny with you and she's in a bad mood or whatever, or is it behind? It might actually be before this happens, But in any case, at one point she gets in a bad mood. It's absolutely not your fault whatsoever. She just takes it out on you. Same thing again. She apologises later, explains it away, but it just feels a bit like out of nowhere, like you just pushing your problems onto Meredith, you know. And in terms of a plot device, once again, it seems a bit loose. There's no consequence really for it afterwards. In terms of the dialogue options, you can choose to say, you know, you were really mean to me, I didn't appreciate that, and Angie will be like, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, it wasn't fair, etc. And that seems to be it. And you start having a normal conversation again. It's like, oh, so you're thinking of leaving Providence Falls? And she's like, yeah, I want to go back to, well, no, I want to travel. She doesn't want to go back to anywhere, basically. And that's kind of the end of it, and then you can choose to go see a film with her and stuff like that. It's just stuff that doesn't, it feigns tension and then it doesn't deliver. Like, it just takes it away. It's like, oh, we feel like we might have been going down a dramatic route, so we're going to pull it back. But instead of making it feel like a tension relief, and same thing again, a catharsis, it feels like dangling the carrot. Like, oh, it looked like there was going to be a plot device down this road, but now it's a dead end and we've done a U-turn and come back. Like I said, not trying to slate this game, it is an enjoyable little experience. It was just something I noticed that I thought could have been improved upon. So, once again, we've got to the point in the video where I discuss anything to do with music. The one thing I do appreciate in this game is that it does have a radio in the van whilst you're driving, but same thing, there's a slight qualm with that. They only have about 3 songs and they just play over and over and over and over, and it just gets a bit repetitive and grating, to be honest, so I ended up turning the radio off, which is not something I often do in games. I was a bit shocked myself. But it turns out that the local farmer, Mr. Reynolds, is in charge of the radio station, and the thing that piqued my interest is the fact that you can actually open a dialogue with him about the radio station, saying, you know, I've noticed that you only play the same songs over again. And his response to this is basically, yeah, I don't really have time. And it's just like, there was such an opportunity for a mission there then. Like, you could be like, oh, well, I can go home and I can see what records or cassettes or whatever else CDs I've got, and I could curate a playlist for you. And he could be like, oh yeah, cool, see what you've got, bring it to me and we can work something out, you know, we can make a new playlist. But there was nothing like that whatsoever. There was a clear opportunity to have a little side mission go on, for you to be able to build upon the music. And I know that it does alert you within the game that this is kind of like copyright free music and everything like that, but there are actually lots of copyright free artists. And not to always go on and harp about Life is Strange, but in the newest one, True Colours, they actually do use quite a bit of royalty free music, and it's really cool sounding stuff. When you have the jukebox on in the Black Lantern, you actually want to listen to it, and so I was like, that could have very well been incorporated in Lake, you know. You go back home, you listen to some songs, you know, on the record player, and they don't have to be mainstream music that you would recognise. They just have to be cool songs where you're like, hey, yeah, we could put this on the radio, and it just, you know, bulks it out a little bit more. But instead, yeah, I ended up turning the radio off because it really didn't go anywhere with respect to that. Although the tunes that are on there are kind of like, you know, pleasant little things, but also, just my opinion, they also didn't really sound like songs from the 80s. They sounded a little bit more contemporary in some respects, and so they could have maybe chosen a little bit of a different soundtrack there. But anyway, one thing that is cool about the radio though is that when you get in the truck each morning, you basically have a what's going on in Providence Oaks thing, and the residents of the town will ring in and either be like, hey, this thing happened in Providence Oaks that I love and that's why I love to live here and everything, or someone will ring up and be like, you know, so-and-so did this, and basically it's them throwing shade at somebody else within the community, and it's basically an excuse to be salty about something, so it can be quite funny. But yeah, it's a nice little touch having like a radio show come on in the morning, but other than that, then yeah, the radio is a little bit lackluster, just a little bit. But I know what they were trying to do with this, and you can see the effort there, so I do appreciate that. But yeah, if they ever do an update for the game, maybe they could just chuck in a few more tracks so it's not just the same songs going round and round. And that's it for this video then. Thank you for watching. If you've made it to this point, then thank you so much. I appreciate you very much. I hope you enjoyed the video and you learned a little bit of something. Let us know in the comments below if you've played Lake, if you enjoyed it. Please give a like and a share. Like I said, I did enjoy the game. It is a very nice game to play. It's very soothing, calming and relaxing, so they definitely hit the nail on the head there. There are just some things that I thought could have been a bit better, and they obviously weren't going for a gritty game, but there were just some plot points that I felt would have been more effective if they were grittier. Until next time, hope you have a great day, hope you have a great week, and keep on exploring. See you later, guys.